Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Grant. I'm the host of this evening's webinar. I'm going to be introducing, I'm very excited about having Herb Broda as our presenter this evening. You're in for a real treat. But before I introduce Herb, I just want to say a few words about the webinar series in general, and also about how tonight's webinar is organized. And I say tonight, quote unquote, that it is early evening here in the Eastern time zone of North America, but I realize for some of you it's going to be late afternoon if you're on the west coast of North America, and those of you joining from Australia, New Zealand, England, of course, are looking at either a stayed up very, very late, or you're listening in on Thursday morning. So to one and all, a big welcome. I'm the editor of Green Teacher. Herb, if you can advance the slide for me. It's a nonprofit magazine we've been publishing for 20 years that provides an opportunity for youth educators to share their most innovative teaching and learning ideas with young people. And in the last 10 years, we've also had an opportunity to put together a series of books. Thanks, Herb. And so and over the course of the last 20 years, it's been an opportunity to work with an incredibly wonderful and diverse group of educators who have contributed countless hours to developing and sharing their expertise. So it's been a really exciting new development for us to start offering webinars here in 2011. This is, I think, our 6th webinar, and it's been great fun. And I want to essentially what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to, in a few moments, introduce Herb Broda and turn it over to him. He will deliver his presentation for 25 to 30 minutes, during which I'm going to interrupt him a couple of times to ask you questions so that we can learn a little bit more about yourself and your thoughts on this topic. But at the end of the 30 minutes, we're going to turn it over to you to ask your questions, and I'll explain when we get there how to do that. And at the very end, there'll be a small survey that I'll ask you to stay for another minute or two to fill out, and those that do will be eligible to win one of two free digital subscriptions for nonprofit magazine Green Teacher. The other thing, there were as of this afternoon, 140 of you had registered for this session, but as you can see from the numbers at the top of the people list, we have about 28 people, and I'm sure that will grow a little bit. And there's what we've noticed in the last couple of webinars is that large numbers of people are signing up, and a smaller and smaller percentage are actually showing up. And part of that is because we've been advertising that anyone can view the archive version of the webinar. So as a result, we're finding even more people now are viewing the archives, and many people are having popcorn parties, as one person described it today, where they get all the staff at their school or all the staff at Nature Center together to watch and listen to one of the webinars. But the 30 of you who are now on this call have a special advantage over those other people, because you're going to be able to ask your questions, and it's more likely that all of your questions will get answered this evening. So I think that's all I need to tell you about going to do tonight. So without further ado, one more thing. You'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen a chat box. And when Herb starts his presentation, I want to feel free to put comments in the chat box if you have any questions that you don't want to wait for, or if you're having technical difficulties. You'll see in that empty box underneath the chat box, you can type in your question and then just hit enter, and it will appear on the screen for everyone to see. And it's not just, you may want to pay attention to that, I don't want to distract you from Herb's presentation, but in our experience, we've had a conversation on almost all of the presentations so far in the chat box, that's been really fun, and it's really helped us. And occasionally it's identified problems that I need to, as the host, jump in and correct. But anyway, let me move on. Without further ado, I am, as I said earlier, very excited to have Herb Broda as our special guest presenter tonight. I met Herb many years ago at a conference in Ohio where I quickly appreciated his very fine sense of humor, that he's a real bon vivant and a wonderful guy who really animates and energizes everyone around him. He's a professor of education at Ashland University in Ohio, where he teaches graduate and undergraduate courses in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. His areas of concentration are middle school education, outdoor experiential education, environmental education, curriculum development, and instructional design. He's a past president of the Environmental Education Council of Ohio, the state professional organization for people working in the field. He's the author of the much admired and well-reviewed in Green Teacher a book from 2007 entitled Schoolyard Enhanced Learning, Using the Outdoors as an Instructional Tool. And many of us are really looking forward to the publication later this spring of his second sort of companion volume called Moving the Classroom Outdoors, Schoolyard Enhanced Learning in Action. Both are published by Stenhouse Publishers out of Portland, Maine. Finally, I would say that back in October, I've had a great opportunity to meet and get to know Herb at several conferences since our initial meeting, and last fall he gave a keynote speech to a conference I was participating in Michigan, and the keynote speech very much reflects tonight's presentation, and I knew it would make a great webinar session, and so I'm, as I say, delighted that he agreed to be a presenter in tonight's webinar. Please join me in a round warm of welcome to Herb Broda.
Thanks, Tim. Let's see, do I advance to the next slide? Do you want this one now?
No, you want to go to slide number 4.
Okay, slide number 4 is right here. Wait a minute. Well, there are the Green Teacher books. And this is slide 4. This is multiple choice. This is the start of my presentation, I think. There we go, folks.
Yeah, that's great. So let's go back. Sure. Actually, we might that if that's before the question, please do.
Go back to the question.
Sure. I guess since I'm sorry, folks, we're stumbling a little bit here, but we were going to ask a question in a moment, anyways. Would you please take a moment and tell us, choose one or more of the options in front of you, and that'll help us know who's on the call tonight. And Herb, if you can leave us up for about another 10, 15 seconds, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, folks, let's plunge in here. I'm delighted to be here, and Tim, thank you so much for those very, very kind words. I am always delighted to have a chance to talk about a topic that I just feel so strongly about. You're going to have to excuse me, because at times I just get so passionately caught up in this, I almost approach it with true missionary zeal. I feel so strongly that we need to do all that we can in today's world to try to help children reconnect with the out of doors again. I think we have a real issue that's going on here, and one that we really, really have to try to make more and more folks aware of. I love this quote by Rich Louv. The best indicator of environmental problems may not be the spotted owl, but rather the number of children sitting inside. There is so much truth to that. You know, when you stop and think, it really is, it sums up the issue extremely well. We have so many kids that are simply sitting inside. We have so many children, indeed, today, who really do not view going outside even as an option. It's not even viewed as an option at all. one thing I'd like to do is talk a little bit, or explore with you a little bit, what's causing that loss of contact. Beyond a doubt, the top issue that's named here is a big one. Safety is a real issue, and for an awful lot of kids today, frankly, it isn't always safe to just go outside. There are an awful lot of kids today who live in areas where you can't just say, go out and play in the yard, go down the street and play, kick the can. You just can't do that. Frankly, for an awful lot of kids, the safest place to be is actually at school. And the safest place to experience the outdoors oftentimes is at school. So it is an issue, there's no doubt about it. That has caused a certain amount of loss of contact. Sometimes, though, and I'll be very honest with you, I think especially I've noticed over the last 8 to 10 years, we've become almost increasingly germ-phobic. Have you noticed that? There's so much concern about germs, and we sell gallons and gallons of Purell and hand sanitizer and all of that kind of thing. And we're almost dirt-phobic, too. You know, it's the idea that we've got to keep our children clean, and if there's any little bit of mud on them, we've got to dust them off, we've got to sterilize them, we have to get them clean. We've almost become obsessed with this whole idea of being clean and germs, and the idea that you shouldn't get any kind of little bump or cut or scrape at all. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I absolutely feel very, very strongly that we need to keep our kids safe, and there's no doubt about that at all. Believe me, I'm the dad of 3 kids, and I believe very, very strongly that we need to keep kids as safe as we can. But on the other hand, I think if we can almost become stifling when we don't let a child have any experiences at all out of a fear of a little cut or a little scrape or a little bruise or a little dirt. A second issue that is definitely causing a loss of contact, I think, is this whole fact of overscheduled kids and parents. You know, I don't know about you, but it bothers me to see a 4th grader who has to have an appointment book. There's something wrong with that. We seem to live in a world today where we are beautifully blessed with all kinds of extra kinds of extension activities and clubs and groups that kids can get involved with. We have so many of those in every community, even in very small communities. Like kids can be involved with sports teams, for example, the entire year round. Kids can be involved with dance classes and chess clubs and guitar clubs and you name it. If you wanted to, as a child, even as a 3rd or 4th grader, you could be occupied almost constantly several days a week. What's happened, I think, is that has led to a tremendous amount of overscheduling. It's led to a tremendous amount of parents having to scoot kids back and forth, hither and yon. And frankly, we have kind of lost track of what I feel is a very important concept, and that's the whole concept of nothing time. I think we need to emphasize that we should not underestimate the value of nothing time. Little kids are very good at this. They can do a beautiful job of just going outside and poking around and looking at stones and looking at bushes. What's wrong with that? Even just stretching out on our backs and looking up the clouds in the sky, that's nothing time, but that's very valuable, valuable time. As adults, we've become so obsessed oftentimes with the idea of being busy. We're almost embarrassed to say, you know, I'm not very busy today. We feel that we have to constantly be saying, oh man, am I busy, and I don't know how I'm going to ever get everything done. We get so obsessed with that I think it rubs off on our kids too, and they oftentimes really do underestimate the value of just doing a little bit of nothing. I think, though, probably one of the biggest factors that's causing the loss of contact is 2 terms that I've coined: video vegetation and techno-gadgetation. We live in a world today where we are beyond a doubt technologically obsessed. We are blessed with all kinds of techno-gadgets, all kinds of video screens, you name them. I thought it might be kind of fun to take a little walk down memory lane and take a look at how this electronic media has actually come into playing. You need to be aware that our techno-obsession goes back a long time. Notice on this slide, for example, that the first video game really came out in 1960. That's 50 years ago. Now you have to stop and think that when that first video game came out, it didn't appear and then just fade into nothing after 4 or 5 years. When that first video game came out in 1960, there has been a steady stream of video games that have become ultra advanced, ultra alluring and sophisticated right up until now. So what you're seeing on the screen is simply the start time when a lot of these gadgets came into place, but they've constantly become increasingly sophisticated. For example, the first handheld calculator came out in 1967. That thing could only add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Anybody have one of those? Raise your hands if you had one of the first ones. I wish I could see you. I did. But now, my gosh, for a price at probably a third of what that calculator cost in 1967, you can get a calculator today that can add, subtract, multiply, divide, has memory, can do square roots, you name it. It's absolutely amazing how all of these things have advanced. Anybody have a cell phone way back when? Those were oftentimes referred to as bag phones because they were actually literally in large bags that were actually stuck in cars. Cable TV came on the scene, of course, and a really pivotal point is 1976. That's a really benchmark year. Well, it was the year when one of my sons was born, but other than that, it has another implication too. 1976 is when Sony first introduced the first VCR. That was a watershed moment in terms of techno-gadgetation and video vegetation, because now you could actually record TV shows and watch them over and over again. Prior to that date, frankly, you had to be in your house when the show was on. You watched the TV show, it was over, it was gone and done. Well, with the introduction of the VCR, you could now watch things over and over again. A kid could watch a cartoon that he or she enjoyed maybe 10 or 15 times over and over again. It also allowed us to now bring movies into our homes and watch those movies over and over again. The VCR was definitely a watershed moment from the standpoint of giving us the opportunity to stay indoors hooked up to screens. Anybody have the first Atari? Wave your hands if you did, or hit a smile button or something, I don't know. They, of course, these games have come so far and have advanced unbelievably over time. 1980 was, oh, thank you for the smile, Michelle. That's great. The Walkman came out in 1980. Now, the Walkman isn't such a bad thing because the Walkman at least got us outside. We could hear our tunes as we walked along outside. The Internet became established, of course, and has been an integral part of our lives ever since. IM came in 96, high-def TV. The iPod is a major thing that came on the scene in 01. Skype, of course, is used a lot. Facebook, talk about something that eats up a tremendous amount of time. Oh, my land. Facebook is something that can easily eat up 2 or 3 hours of time for an awful lot of kids and adults. And in 05, texting became a very, very big thing. And I really feel that one of the greatest innovations has been the iPod Touch, the ability to have actually a computer in your pocket. Is just an unbelievable gadget which arrived on the scene just about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, I want to be very clear before I go on here. I'm not in any way opposed to technology, and I want to be very clear about that. Technology has done absolutely wonderful things for our lives. Technology has saved hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of lives. It has advanced us in all fields, including medicine. Technology is not something that I feel is bad, not at all. It is simply a matter of emphasis. I am a little concerned that we have become almost numbed by our techno world to the extent that we really don't notice that, frankly, we've been spending most of our time indoors staring at screens instead of trying to get kids outdoors enjoying the world around them. Well, in 09, of course, at that point, we had things like the Droid and the iPhone were in big usage, and the iPad arrived, of course, in 2010, and who knows what's going to be here in 2011, 2012, and on down the line. You know, it makes you stop and think, how much more can we possibly invent? It's absolutely fascinating, I think, to me. I think this is interesting food for thought. A kindergartner has watched more than 5,000 hours of TV by age 5. Try to comprehend that. 5,000 hours of TV by age 5. That's more than enough hours to earn a college degree. Whoa, 5,000 hours by age 5. Oh, you can see TVs everywhere. I love this shot. This is a fridge. and it actually has a TV on the door of the fridge, so you never have to miss any shows at all. They're all right there. And, of course, we have TVs now in cars, too. And, again, I'm a proud dad of 3 kids, and my wife and I would have been, I bet, probably pretty glad when we made those epic trips west if we would have had a TV set in the car. But on the other hand, I am concerned when people cannot even drive a half an hour or not even drive across town without that set being on. That, I think, is overdoing it. And again, it boils down to that whole matter of emphasis again. It really does. Well, how is technosaturation affecting us? Beyond a doubt, it is causing less and less connection with the out of doors. This slide, I think, is very interesting. A child is 6 times more likely to play a video game on a typical day than to ride a bike. That's kind of scary to me. 6 times more likely to play a video game on a typical day than to ride a bike. This one really got to me. One study found that kids could identify 1,000 corporate logos. Think of that, 1,000 corporate logos. But they could identify fewer than 10 plants or animals that were native to their own backyard. I think that's very, very telling. 1,000 corporate logos, but could not identify 10 plants or animals native to their own backyard. Unbelievable. Of course, they can identify those 1,000 corporate logos because they're seeing them over and over and over again on those screens. Beyond a doubt, another thing that has changed has been an impact on children's play. Now, I want you to all assist me here. I want you to close your eyes. Close your eyes tight. Amy, I think you're peeking over there. Allison, close your eyes, please. Okay, everybody get your eyes closed. Oh, Paul, your eyes are open. Okay, get them all closed. I want you to think about how you used to play as a child. Get a vision in your mind of how you used to play as a child. Imagine you're age 10 or age 12. What kinds of things did you play as a child? In fact, you might want to text a few of those in. It would be kind of fun. How did you spend your time playing as a child? Oh, fort building, swinging sky high on a tire swing with my dog. Oh, how wonderful. Tag in the woods, Laura Ingalls Wilder, hide and seek. We played house. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful stuff. But you know what's happening today? It's very interesting. Howard Chudikoff at Brown did a very interesting study, and he found that when we talk about play today, when children today talk about play, they're talking frequently and mentioning frequently toys. They're mentioning brand name products. But when people over the age of 25, at least, are talking about play, they're talking more about activities. And my gosh, you folks did the same thing. You talked about tree swings. You talked about playing kick the can. You talked about tag outside, dress up, climbing trees. You talked about activities, not named objects. Whereas today, oftentimes, if we ask kids, what do you play or how do you play, they'll mention brand name products like, for example, a Star Wars lightsaber. That is a big change. What's happening is because of an awful lot of marketed products, we have kids that are not using their imagination much at all, but instead are playing with brand name kinds of things instead of doing the kinds of inventive play that a lot of us experienced in our youth. I'd like you to meet Darth Tater. I bet a lot of you had the potato head sets as a child. The old potato head sets came with, probably 8 or 10 different eyes, 6 or 8 different kinds of noses, 8 or 10 different kinds of feet, and you could create all kinds of interesting, weird, or fun little potato people. Well, if you buy Darth Tater over here on the far left, the only thing you can make is Darth Tater. Looks cute, but not extremely innovative. They even have an Easter version, which you see here. I think it's most appropriate. Can you see that line? Does that allow me to make a line on the screen? Oh, good.
It does. It does indeed.
Okay, so you can actually see the Easter version. Again, it's the same old thing. You can just make those 2 things that you see there. You cannot make anything else. again, we're getting away from the idea of imaginative play, and that bothers me a bit. It really does. Now, I have to unabashedly say that's my grandson, and I want to also add I did not tell him to do this. He did this on his own. But what he loves doing, in that picture he's probably around age 5 or age 6, what he loves doing is taking the garden hose and arranging it in all kinds of patterns on the lawn, which he calls a maze. And then, as you can see him doing here, he walks along that maze from beginning back here all the way to the end over here. Again, that's an example of the kind of creative play that we're sort of losing today. And I hate to see it lost. I think we need to have that back again. We need to encourage children to play creatively outdoors. It is a little scary that kids today spend an average of only 30 minutes of unstructured time outdoors each week. Think about that. 30 minutes a week. That's not even 5 minutes a day, folks. That is way, way too small of an amount of unstructured time outside. We all ought to be spending much more unstructured time outside, not just children. And, of course, the impact on health is there also. That has affected us. No doubt about it. Obesity is a huge issue. It's an issue that we absolutely have to grapple with. And, again, you're going to potentially become overweight if you're spending all of your time indoors. One real advantage of going outside and hiking or just taking walks is that we get exercise, which is extremely important if we're going to offset obesity. And I think we have to also keep in mind that techno-saturation may hurt us in terms of developing a stewardship ethic down the road, and I think that's so extremely important. I really, really like this quote by Pyle. What is the extinction of the condor to a child who has never known a wren? I do feel so strongly that if children have powerful, meaningful aha experiences in the out of doors, it does lead to the development of a stewardship ethic, beyond a doubt. You know, these kids will grow up to be voters, and why should they care about the out of doors and vote for things like green space if they have never learned an appreciation for it? If for nothing else, I think going outdoors and getting kids outdoors often does help build that stewardship ethic, which is extremely important today, I think. Extremely. This one really gets me. This one, in fact, if you're sitting in a chair, hold on to it because you may fall off of the chair after I get done with this slide. This is the new Oxford Junior Dictionary. It's used a great deal in schools. It's oftentimes used in grades 4 through 8 or 3 through 8. It is intended basically for youth, and it is updated every few years. The latest edition removed a number of words, and on the left-hand side you see some of the words that were removed from the Oxford Junior Dictionary. Dandelion was removed. Dandelion! I mean, dandelion is a very, very, very common thing. Unbelievable. Heron, otter, acorn was removed. Clover, willow. These words were taken out of the Oxford Junior Dictionary. Now, when the editors were asked why were these words taken out, they very honestly answered that their research showed that these words were removed because they're not really viewed to be a part of a child's experience. That really scares me. Think about that. Those words were removed. Words like dandelion, acorn, clover, ivy, willow, those words were removed because research showed that they were not a part of most children's experience. That scares me, folks. It really scares me. Because you know, dictionaries really reflect our culture and our interests. That is a very, very powerful barometer. And when you see words like that being removed, whoa, that is frightening. Now, they, of course, added words, and you can see those on the right. They added the word BlackBerry. Now, that's the phone, that's the BlackBerry Bush. They added words like blog, MP3 player, the kinds of things that you would expect to see included in our techno-gadgetation age that we happen to be in. This slide really, when I first heard about this, I thought, wow, this makes me all the more passionate about trying to get people to understand the importance of trying to get children into the out of doors. So critically important. Well, what can we do about the whole issue? I think it's critically important to keep in mind that we all are important parts of the solution. And the very fact that all of you are here this evening is an important indicator that you view yourself also as a part of the solution itself. And I'm excited about that. And I believe it goes to Tim.
Thanks, Herb, and a great start here. Folks, just another question for you, again, to give us a better sense of who you are. And I can report while you're filling this in that of the 30 of you who responded to the first question about, are you a formal, non-formal educator, that 2/3 of you are non-formal educators, obviously working in a variety of settings. And in this slide, of course, you're going to tell us which, as a non-formal or classroom teacher, what are the kind of content areas that you focus on in the instructional programs that you have.
Okay, I'll give you a short while to click those. Oh, it only allows one choice, I see here. I feel very strongly that if we're going to try to get kids into the out of doors, one very good place to do that is in the school or the schoolyard. And I coined this term schoolyard enhanced learning to try to get that idea across. I feel that by using the outdoors around the school to enhance instruction, we can get kids outside, but we can also improve instruction too. Notice that schoolyard enhanced learning doesn't refer to just science. I want to be very, very clear about that. I think we can use the out of doors for instruction to enhance instruction in almost any area, in mathematics, in history, in the fine arts, you name it. We can use the out of doors to enhance instruction extremely well. So the concept of schoolyard enhanced learning is really simply the idea of opening up the schoolhouse door and stepping outside and using that space that we have on our school grounds as an instructional tool. You don't have to have a field trip for them. You don't have to have kids bring in money. You just simply step outside and use the outdoors instructionally. I think it's important, if you're going to use the outdoors and the school ground as a teaching area, it's very helpful to think of the outdoors as both venue and content. If you can get that idea in your mind that the out of doors is both a venue, a place to go for instruction, as well as a content source, then I think you can think of all kinds of meaningful and interesting, exciting ways that you can use the out of doors as an instructional tool. For example, if we think of the out of doors as a venue, we're really talking about the concept of a change of place. And I'm a very, very strong believer in that concept of a change of pace and a change of place. If you look at the slide on the left, what has happened there is a group of 5th grade students were inside studying the concept of the bar graph. They then went outdoors and formed a human bar graph on the school grounds. So what happened simply was that an abstract concept called bar graph was studied inside, and then children went outside and translated that abstract concept into something that they were actually a living part of. These kids are going to remember what a bar graph is, I'm sure. Another way to use the out of doors as a venue, and it's used constantly, in fact I use it with my own students here at the university, is to simply go outside for a discussion, to go outside to read a book, to just have that change of place. We really, really, really all need that change of place. Sometimes it is so refreshing to just step outside and be in a different place, even if you're not studying what is around you in the out of doors, but just doing what you could have done indoors in the out of doors is very, very powerful. Now, this is a great example, I think, of using the out of doors as a venue also. This is a school near Atlanta, Georgia, that had a chain link fence, and I think almost every school has got the abominable, ugly chain link fence on its grounds. But what these people did was they used that chain link fence actually as a venue. And what they did is they took children's artwork and put that all the way along the chain link fence and turned this fence into a beautiful outdoor art gallery. And they changed what was out there then every few weeks so that lots of students had a chance to show their work on the fence. Great idea, great way to use the out-of-doors as a venue. Now, of course, you could use the out-of-doors as a content source, and that's probably the easiest way. In the slide that you see here, students went outside, they tried to find what kinds of things were found in the lawn, and then they came back inside and actually made a graph of what they found in the out-of-doors. I really, really, really like the Journey North website, and I encourage you, if you have not been there, go to Google and type in Journey North. And Journey North is a very elaborate, a very sophisticated site that has all kinds of examples of explorations that students can do, and frankly, all kinds of experiments that students can do. Now, the one that I have on the screen here, and the one that I really love, is the tulip experiment. What is done here is students plant tulip bulbs in the fall of the year. And once they plant their tulip bulb, they then mark or put their zip code into the computer, and it will then, an icon will pop up on the map showing where their school is. Then, in the spring of the year, when the first green tip emerges of that bulb, they go again and put in another or put their zip code in again, and a different icon pops up to show that now there is a hint of green that is showing above the soil. When the tulip is then in bloom, they once again type in the zip code, and they can then, a third icon pops up so that you can really watch spring move across North America. You can actually see it moving from south to north. And the exciting thing about this is kids are actually a part of an experiment. They are a part of citizen science. They're actually taking part in a research experiment. The thing I love about it is you have kids planting a bulb in the fall, and then those same kids can watch that bulb emerge in the spring. It's absolutely exciting that the schools that have used this just love it. Kids get so excited when they actually see their icon popping up on the map on the screen, and they're, of course, constantly dashing outside to see if the bulb is growing more, how much of the green shoot is now above the soil. It is really an exciting, energizing kind of thing that gets kids excited about the outdoors and, frankly, helps to merge technology with outdoor exploration, which I think is a really, really neat idea. Well, the question always is asked, does it really work? We constantly are faced with this idea or with this question, if I take my kids outside, if I do outdoor instruction, will it help student achievement? Well, that absolutely is a resounding yes. There's no doubt about that. Most studies, and there have been a lot of them done, especially within the last 5 to 6 years or so, there have been an awful lot of studies done to explore to what extent students do well or have improved on tests. And again, resoundingly, what has been shown over and over again is that kids do better on standardized measures of academic achievement in all content areas. Notice that. That's reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. It's not just science. Kids do better on standardized tests on all of those measures. I should add the caveat here, if there is good indoor instruction that is coupled with good outdoor instruction. You need both, obviously. There also is reduced discipline and classroom management issues. And I think that's a very interesting one because at times folks are a little leery about going outside because they're afraid that kids are going to just go wild. But actually, research has shown just the opposite. When you take kids outdoors, if they're prepared well and you explain what the rules are indoors and explain the rules again outside, there is reduced discipline and classroom management issues. I think that is really exciting, really, really exciting things. If you have an interest in exploring more, I would encourage you to take a look at these sites. The C+NN site is excellent, and if you type that in, don't type in CNN or you'll get something different. You need to type in C and NN. That's the Children and Nature Network. This is a very rich site, a robust site that has all kinds of wonderful things on it. But the thing I like the most about it is it has the last 5 or 6 years worth of research that has been done in terms of children and nature and the out of doors. They don't just look at school achievement, but they look at the whole broad context of what kind of research is being done to look at children's involvement in the out of doors. If you're interested in research, this is an absolutely outstanding site. They give a capsule account of the study that has been done. You can then oftentimes click on a link and go right to the study itself. A very, very powerful site, and it's absolutely free. The NWF also does extremely good things. They have a lot of very interesting guides and activities and things of that type that you can do with kids in the out of doors. They have just marvelous guides for parents, for instructors, for everybody. Green Teacher is an extremely valuable resource, and I would encourage you to go to Tim's site and look at all of the vast array of things that they have there. Evergreen, the Canadian organization, is absolutely outstanding. I had a chance to meet with folks at Evergreen and was extremely impressed with the professionalism and the wide range of help that they offer to schools and communities. So there is an awful lot of help that you can gain, an awful lot of useful stuff that's out there. Well, there's some things that we all can do. I think a thing that we sometimes don't think about, but I think it's very important, is in our own communities to go to town meetings, things of that type, and try to educate architects, builders, community planners, and all of that about the importance of putting green space in and maintaining native habitats. Oftentimes those concepts get brushed aside or get missed, but I think if we give thought to that and push that, we can do an awful lot to keep our communities green. Well, there are an awful lot of things that we can all do, and I think probably one of the most important things we can do is to encourage adults to take kids outside. I know that may sound extremely easy and simplistic, but it's really not. Again, keep in mind that techno-gadgetry has been around a long time, and because of it, we've almost become numb to a certain extent, and that's a little scary to me. We need to encourage adults as well as kids to make reconnecting children and nature an absolute priority. It's critically important. I feel so strongly about that. Well, one thing I would like you to do right now is to kind of pause again and just quietly think, how can you share nature with a child in your life this week? Give some thought right now to how you can share nature with a child in your life yet this week, within the next 4, 5, 6 days. It might be your own child, it might be a grandchild, it might be the neighbor's child next door, a niece, nephew, anyone. Try to think about how you can share nature with a child in your life. I hope you've got that child in mind, and I hope you've got that activity in mind. And my land, I hope that you go outside and do that. Because I fervently do believe that we can help kids to unplug and tune in to the wonders of the natural world around them. I believe that. I really think we can help kids to unplug and tune in. But we have to take the time to step outside. Thank you so much for the chance to talk with you folks. You've been a great audience. You stuck with me, as I can see on the charts here. And I do hope that you've gotten at least, if not an idea or two, at least you've gotten a hint of passion about the importance of trying to get kids back into the out of doors. I do feel strongly, I'm going to make another passionate plea here, that the use of the schoolyard is extremely important. I think that for an awful lot of kids, their exposure to the out of doors is going to come on school grounds. And I think we need to do everything that we can to encourage schools to use their school grounds for instruction. Even extremely urban schools can do a lot of marvelous, wonderful things in terms of creating outdoor space that is instructionally sound. So I would encourage you to give some thought to working with schools that you know and trying to get them to think about ways that they can move instruction into the out of doors. Again, thank you so much. You've been a great group, and I'd be glad to try to answer anything that anyone has. I haven't had a chance to actually read the role here as it's gone, because it's kind of hard to talk and read at the same time here.
Well, thank you very much, Herb. And if you could just advance us to that question slide, we'll start taking everyone's questions. And you're absolutely right to have noticed that we had real active chat here. I would say enthusiastic back and forth in the chat room from many of the people on this webinar, which is really great. But your presentation was fantastic, and really appreciated it. What I'd like you to do now, everyone, is as you can see readily in the box, is to just type in your questions. I'm going to retrieve them back office location here, and then I'll pitch them one at a time to Herb. So take your time. Once you hit the submit button, and you've got a blank screen again, feel free to ask another question if anything springs to mind.
I love this one statement from Carrie, who says, "We can survive without blogs, not without acorns." So that's excellent. That's great.
So here's the first question for you, Herb. How can we create an environment, and I think they mean, a conducive environment?
Whoops, I think I've lost you, Tim.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Can you know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the question is that was asked. The first question is, how can we create, an environment that's conducive for school administrators and teachers alike to feel comfortable with the idea of kids going out of doors, even if it's just into the schoolyard to do outdoor.
Well, I think a key thing is there has to be at least a little bit of professional development done. I think folks need some idea, some understanding of the things that you have to do first. I'm a strong believer, as an example, that you establish some kind of a teaching meeting space in the out of doors first, where when you walk right outside, there's a specific place where you go, and in that place you talk about what you're going to do in the out of doors. It kind of that way offsets the recess type of mindset that can develop otherwise. Frequently, if you can get one or two people passionately interested in outdoor instruction and they take their kids outside for instruction, that tends to rub off because people see the excitement, they see the enthusiasm, and oftentimes those that are on the fence thinking, well, it sounds good, but I'm not so sure. Wow, that if they can see colleagues down the hall taking their students outside doing meaningful things, that's powerful. Staff development, I think, is important too. Frankly, there are a lot of books out, not just mine, that deal with, what are some of the things, step 1, step 2, step 3, that you can do to try to use the outdoors instructionally. That kind of staff development, I think, is important. A well-placed book in the faculty lounge can be a help too. And I think that there is no better way to get people excited about using the outdoors instructionally than having a few people on the staff demonstrating themselves, showing that, wow, this is a powerful thing to do.
Thank you, Herb. And by the way, Sinead had a really good comment, as you'll see in the chat room, about the need for nature-based curriculum to be integrated into teacher education programs. I'm just working with someone's going to do a session later this spring on that very topic of how some teacher educators are starting to do that. Another question for you, Herb. We often see when we talk about schoolyard greening, we see lovely nature, natural classroom settings with full of great habitat. But what do you do if you're in a really urban environment with no soft surfaces? Maybe you're in the Bronx in New York City, where you've just got a small amount of paved surfaces. How would you encourage teachers and parents and others in that setting to use the out of doors?
I had a chance to do actually a great deal of work with schools in Boston, and of course a lot of the schools there, the extremely urban schools, are really on extremely small sites. The sites basically have the school, room to park, and that's about it. A little space for kids to play, and that's it. It is amazing, though, how in those schoolyards, which are in very tight spaces, they were able to carve out, at times, spaces no larger than 3 or 4 or maybe 5 cars wide. They dug up those spaces, and by carefully planting interesting kinds of plants in those spaces and using interesting logs, interesting wood, interesting rocks, but putting a lot into that small space, kids learned a tremendous amount and gained a great deal by that experience of being outdoors. I think at times we have the idea that we need to have a vast expanse. We have to have acres of land in order to do outdoor instruction. But you really need just a very, very small space. In fact, it's almost easier to work with kids in the out of doors if the space is rather small and contained. I was just amazed at the kinds of things that they've done in the Boston schools. The book that I have out in May has a chapter that actually has a tremendous amount about those schools, the Boston schools, and has a lot of snapshots that shows the kinds of site enhancements that they've done in these very, very small spaces. It doesn't take a large area. I talked with one developer who said it really takes about 5 parking spaces is about all that you need. And most schools, even those that are quite cramped, can find a way to give up that amount of space. It doesn't take a huge amount. It takes a lot of variety of different kinds of plants, different kinds of boulders, those kinds of things, but it does not take a large space at all.
Thanks, Herb. And Jeff, your comment is a good one too about rooftop gardens. But
that's being a point too.
I really like your answer about the 5 parking spaces. I get asked that question a lot, Herb, and I'm going to remember your answer the next time I get asked. That's great. Another question, another curveball kind of question, but a good one from Catherine is, what do you do if you're in a school that's very sort of technology oriented, lots of cyber-friendly teachers? Any suggestions for how to merge, the good use of technology with outdoor learning?
That is a great question, yeah. And because I think at times, and I hope that I didn't do it this evening, but I think at times we almost give the image that techno kinds of things are the enemy, and that's so far from the truth. I think there are a lot of ways that we can merge technology with the out of doors. In fact, I hate to give another plug again, but in the book that's coming out in May, my son, who's a professor at another school, actually wrote an entire chapter on weaving technology into the out of doors. Just a few examples of those of these things might be, well, as an example, almost every school can afford digital cams. Those have become extremely cheap. Kids can go outside, record images of plants as the plants grow, go out and take a snapshot of something fascinating that they find in the out of doors, then bring that snapshot back in and write about it if you want. I mean, there are all kinds of ways that you can use both video cams and still cams in the out of doors. Other schools have had kids go outside and develop podcasts about things that they found on their school grounds, and the podcasts then are accessible to either the school community or the community at large. I saw a very, very fascinating thing where there was a school that had put out some outdoor instructional areas on their school site and had students go outside and make a very short student-made video of all of the different things that they had on the school grounds. And then that video was played on PTA night, parent-teacher night. It also was shown as on the evenings when mom and dad came in to talk about how the child was doing in school. They actually would play that video as people would be out in the hall waiting for their turn to talk to the instructor. And there are lots of ways that you can use techno things in the outdoors. GPS devices are a great example too. I've got a friend at a school who has his students go out and they find an interesting spot that they would like to keep track of the whole year, and they mark that on a GPS device. They then go back into the school and upload that, and they end up with a Google Earth map then of the school grounds that shows where all of these interesting individual sites are that the students then go back to and keep track of what is occurring on that spot every 3 or 4 weeks. So there are all kinds of ways that you can integrate techno things into the outdoors. It's not an either-or kind of thing at all. And of course, you can use wikis and blogs and things of that type to have students share what they've been doing. Another school that I know of has started a blog with a school in England, and they actually share back and forth what fall is like in England as opposed to what fall is like in North Dakota, and they kind of share that back and forth. And again, that's the use of a blog on the internet. So there are lots of ways that you can weave the two together: outdoor instruction as well as techno gadgetation.
And what are any suggestions for how to encourage more parents and caregivers to support outdoor learning?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that frankly are very interested in would be interested in getting kids into the outdoors, but oftentimes they haven't thought about it. Again, it's that numbing effect that I was trying to get across. We're so used to techno gadgets, they become so much a part of our lives that even as adults, we oftentimes don't think as much about going outdoors as we do about looking at the next thing that's in the Netflix queue, or we ourselves become extremely absorbed. And I think one thing that I have found very promising that I think is going to help a lot is that a tremendous number of organizations like the NWF and Evergreen and a variety of others have put out materials aimed at parents. An awful lot of things in the past were basically aimed at schools, but I'm seeing more and more things now that are aimed at the people who actually give care to the child day in and day out, in terms of easy ways that they can do outdoor explorations in the backyard, or that they can do easy outdoor experiences at a local park, whatever. I'm also seeing an awful lot of parks and preserves that are spending much more effort now in terms of designing things, not just for school groups, but designing things for the average parent and child that visit the facility. That, I think, has been a healthy change. I think we need a much broader, much bigger infusion of that kind of material. A lot of people, I think, are very eager to take kids outside, but they're afraid to just go outside and wander around. They want something that they can do with the kid in the outdoors. I think we still have to work a little more, I think, at establishing that concept that there isn't anything wrong with nothing time. But in the interim, it might be a good idea to try to find some things, a lot of examples that we can give folks of things that they can do in the backyard or at a park with their kids in the outdoors.
Herb, Megan is asking also a good question in another direction, and as a teacher-educator, you're probably well placed to answer this, which is nature-based curriculum becoming more and more a part of national common standards across the United States?
Oh boy, I really can't answer that with authority. Are you speaking in K-12 curriculum or teacher preparation curriculum?
Really, I was thinking of K-12, but you can answer it either way.
Again, if you're speaking in terms of teacher prep, each state has its own specific laws and its own specific types of courses that students have to take in order to gain a credential to teach. And it's sad to say, oftentimes nature-based curriculum isn't a part of that. I'm really not seeing a groundswell, at least across the United States, of nature-based curriculum. I'm seeing an awful lot of people who are using the out of doors, though, as an instructional tool, which gets kids into nature, which I'm encouraged about. But in terms of seeing a groundswell of nature-based curriculum, I'm not seeing that as of yet. But I think something we need to keep in mind, these things go in cycles. And we're in a cycle now where green is viewed as being very, very good. People are very interested in things that are green. And I think this is the time when we really have to strongly advocate for things like nature-based curriculum. I do believe that the time is ripe, and I think there are a lot of people who are willing to listen who perhaps a dozen years ago would not have even given it a second thought.
Great. Carrie, by the way, I liked your point earlier in the presentation about engaging urban planners. Do you have any more suggestions as to how one could do that to encourage more nature areas?
Yeah, I would also say not just the folks who plan communities, but also approach physicians too. There's a groundswell now, and I think it's terrific. An awful lot of physicians are starting to say that they are going to actually prescribe a dose of the out of doors for kids. Isn't that great? Richard Louv, as an example, just spoke, I think, last fall to the American Association of Pediatricians. That's not the right name, but it's the right idea. And he was enthusiastically received there. And a lot of physicians now are saying that they will try to strongly suggest and maybe even write out a little prescription for kids to go into the out of doors more. In terms of civic planning, again, I think there we just have to work extremely hard to be informed. We have to know what the long-range plans are for the community. I think it's extremely important when a community is going through a long-range planning phase to be involved with that and make sure that issues of green space are raised loudly and often. Because once those documents are developed and are put in place, they're extremely hard to change. So I think we just have to keep our ear to the ground, attend town council meetings and things of that type, and try and sense when new developments are being planned or when a new master plan for the community is under discussion, and then just be a part of those discussions, just kind of worm our way into them, frankly.